How are you doing? This is the Conduit. It's Marwan Cameron. Man, so glad to see everyone. It is a beautiful day in Kitsap County. In particular, we are in Bremerton, as you already know, 1300 Sylvan Way. That is the headquarters of the new G2 and New Day Ministry. A couple updates. One, it is Thursday. So, what does Thursday mean? It means that New Day is serving dinner to those who need a meal. Starts at 5 p.m. Home cooked, cooked with love, served with love. Come on down every Tuesday and Thursday, 5 p.m. The food bank is open every Monday through Thursday um, from 1 p.m. to 3 p.m. So, again, come on to the food bank and then come for dinner. And there's also a clothing closet here. So, please take advantage of everything. All these resources are here. We're right across the street from the library, and take advantage of the library as well. All right. So, with that said, I want to get right into it and introduce my guest. Sorry we're late. We had some sound and video issues, but now it's all good. Now, you saw her just a few days ago on Friday with Martita, with Charlando con Martita. And we have Tarra Simmons back in the house. So thank you again for coming in and being in studio, which is awesome, right?
Yeah, it's awesome for me too. So thank you for having me.
You know what's interesting is I was looking at some of the past videos. You sent me some links to watch, and so I wanted to look and see what else was out there, right? What people were saying, either positive or negative and whatnot. And we have done a few interviews, but it's been years ago.
Yeah.
And it's like, I think there's one where I have hair, and it's like, man, it was so long ago. So we actually have a pretty good history of having conversation and dialogue, and that's all well and good.
Yeah, I feel like it's been too long, so I'm glad we're reconnecting. And I still watch you, and I still watch your live streams of the city council meetings. So I really appreciate that because it makes it very accessible when I want to tune in. So I appreciate your service in our community in so many ways.
And shout out to BCAT. I just want to say we love all the staff at BCAT, Colleen, the two mics, and there's several good folks out there. And we are just a supplement to what they already do. We're not a replacement, right? We just want to expand democracy and information and access. And so people can see it on Facebook, people can see it on YouTube, and people have different connective tissue, right? And so people that watch me aren't necessarily going to watch it on BCAT, right? Or have access to BCAT. And BCAT does have a YouTube channel, so you can watch it there too. But however we do it, the more people that are participating, the better our democracy can work. The more people are participating.
I agree. Even when people don't agree with me, I want to hear from them in a nice way, though. Sometimes I don't like the personal attacks and all that. I appreciate civil disagreement, and I actually can learn sometimes through that. So
gotcha. Good. Yeah. So what I want to do is just shortly have you introduce yourself for the two people that don't know who you are, right? And just let them know who you are. And then we're going to jump into the interview, and I'll frame it, and then we'll go from there.
All right. Sounds good. So I am Representative Tarra Simmons. You can call me Tarra. I grew up here in Bremerton from the time I was 13 on, and I now serve in the legislature. I have been there. This is my 6th session right now. I'm in Olympia right now. It's session. I have 5 days off right now, so that's great. But I am someone who grew up in poverty and on the streets, and got pregnant at 14, have a significant history of abuse and trauma, and kind of went through foster care, juvenile justice, substance use, became a nurse, jail, prison, became a lawyer, like lots of up and down, lots of life experience. But I have 2 sons now that are 33 and 22 and a new grandbaby. And I try to bring all of those lived experiences, all the different things I've gone through, which is, representative, I think, of the common people that have had struggle and have had to, fight back from nothing. I, was homeless in Evergreen Park when I was pregnant at 14, and after being trafficked on the streets for a couple of years. And so I just feel like my job and my purpose in life is to keep trying to go forward, and even when things aren't perfect, to bring our collective voices and our needs to Olympia. And so I love having the honor of serving my community that I grew up in and fighting for the people who aren't there for whatever reason.
All right. And so say it again. You are state representative of
the 23rd Legislative District, which is from 11th Street and some, parts of Bremerton, and it goes all the way up to the Hood Canal Bridge, which is Paulsbo area, Hood Canal, and then Port Gamble, Kingston, and all the way to Bainbridge Island too.
Gotcha.
So all of the district and Paulsbo.
I'm literally like one block inside the cutoff.
Yeah.
So because I'm right off 13th. So
wonderful.
I'm like
so
right
you
there.
Are my constituent. Yay.
I'm right in there.
Yes.
So, one of the things that I really like is in your title, a state representative, is you are representative of a community and you have a Venn diagram, right? Because you have so many different communities that are typically underrepresented. And that's a big deal because you don't hide from it. And folks need to see that, and they can see themselves in you, and they can see hope, and they can see a possible future that at one point didn't exist. And now it's like, well, if she did it, then I could do that. But what else could I do?
Yeah.
Right. And so it just really is kicking down the doors, and really proud to know someone that was able to do that and continue the fight and to stay in the fight. And people don't understand and I tell people all the time, it's not enough to get someone elected. You have to support them once they're there because they are taking all the arrows, all the shots, whether they're fair or not. Right. And it's hard and you can get beat down. And if you feel like there's no one supporting, it's like, I'm here, but I'm alone. You know what it's like. I'm in the wilderness trying to chop down these bushes. So continue to support. If you're for Tarra, then please continue to support. It's an election year, so it's a big deal. And there's a lot of things that we want to see changed in our communities. And that's the only way that it's going to change, right? And so I'm a big proponent of saying power is taken, it's not given. You can continue to ask, but until you're there to invoke the change, it's so marginal. And you've been able to do so many big things in your short tenure as state representative. So really appreciate that.
Thank you. Thank you. Yeah, I was reminded today, somebody reached out about their healthcare costs and how they were in the hospital and they have insurance, and not somebody I talk to regularly or even maybe don't know him in person. But he said, why do I have a $12,000 bill? I have insurance and all this. And I said, have you applied for charity care? I said, actually, my second session, I think it was, I was able to increase that charity care from 200% of the federal poverty level to 400% of the federal poverty level. So he's like, oh my gosh, my family and I, actually are eligible for it. And I said, you need to apply for that until we get universal health care for all, because I really believe we need to do that too. So join the fight for that. But in the meantime, get your charity care. So it is always nice when I can remember some of the things I've been able to accomplish, because it's been hard. I haven't accomplished a lot of the things that I want to yet. And you have to fight so hard just to get an inch of progress a lot of the time. So thank you for recognizing that.
Absolutely. So I want to get into the questions. And in order to do that, I need to kind of share a little bit about me so that the audience knows what lens that I'm asking these questions from. And of course, Tarra is here. I'm probably going to put off. My daughter's going to understand if I miss part of the game. So, it's so hard to get a hold and have access. So she's okay. I get to most of the home games and it's all right. Go Oli. But the way I want to frame it is, and again, everyone, please put your questions in the chat that you have them. We'll get to as many as we can. If Tarra can't answer them, I'll make sure that they get forwarded to her. And we'll also put her contact information in Olympia for you to reach out to her as well. But like I said, there's a Venn diagram, right? I'm an advocate for homelessness through, Gather Together, Grow Together. I'm an advocate for getting, democracy and people having their voices heard through the conduit, which is why I started that. And if you're looking at the little signs on the wall of the different, departments under G2, the League of Black Male Voters is one that started last year, and you have a black son. And so the League of Black Male Voters is about advocating for issues, but looking at them through the lens of black males. And so a lot of times, I don't know if you've heard the term flat blackness, but oftentimes we'll talk about issues this is a black issue that affects the black community, but sometimes things affect black women, sometimes things affect black men, and sometimes those things need to be parsed out, right? I'll give you an example. We have our Seahawks playing for the Super Bowl Sunday. Go Hawks. We're having a party here Sunday, so it's free food for folks to come in. And so if you want to join us, you're free to do so. But when you think about the Super Bowl, are you into football at all?
Yeah.
Okay. So when the players are wearing pink, what does that signify?
That they're supporting maybe women who have survived breast cancer or going through
Absolutely.
breast cancer.
Now, most of the league is Black,
Mhm.
and one of the things that plagues Black men is prostate cancer.
Mhm.
Do you know what month that's celebrated and what color that is?
I believe it might be purple. I'm not sure.
Nope.
Oh, no, because we haven't raised enough awareness about it, obviously. And I don't know what month. I don't know what month it's celebrated in.
And so that is a prime example, right? So you have a league that is majority Black men that are supporting women, all women, not just Black women, in breast cancer awareness, but they themselves suffer from prostate cancer, and no one really knows what their color is, what month that's celebrated, or anything along those lines, right? So that's what I mean by that. So I always use that example because it's one that's very visceral for people.
Yeah.
So we're going to talk about homelessness and shelters and all kinds of things, but I'm going to couch it all in the frame of Black men, right? Doesn't mean that it's just for Black men, but Black men are typically impacted more than other groups. Is that okay if we do it that way?
Absolutely. I mean, I feel a lot of my work around criminal justice reform is, really disproportionately harming Black men. And you're right, I have a Black son, but I actually have two Black sons. So I do, appreciate that you're elevating those issues. And also, I don't know everything, so I'm happy to learn too.
Gotcha. I love it. All right. So now, when I did a little research, there's a few things that you're advocating for, and maybe I should let you talk about those things first. Like, what things are you advocating for this year? I think that's better to start with, and then I'll ask questions based on that. So, bills that you're bringing forth. I know there's one because I was watching a broadcast. You're like, hey, you guys should be happy. I'm only doing one this year.
I know.
Right. Yeah. But you also are supportive of other bills and things like that. Do you want to just get into those few bills, quickly?
Yeah, I think this particular session, because of what we've seen going on nationally with ICE, is something that's weighing heavily on me. And it's kind of a new area for me. I haven't, really put so much effort towards protecting our communities. It's not just our immigrant communities, because these ICE people across, the nation are harming, U.S. citizens and white people and all kinds of people. They're targeting, a particular group, but we're seeing these deaths and this, violence all across America. And so I think the biggest issues I'm really focused on this session are protecting our communities from federal overreach in general, but ICE is a big part of that. And then also our budget deficit, and ensuring that, the people who are struggling the most are not going to experience the deepest cuts when we pass this budget during the end of session. Now, outside of that, I have a lot of bills in healthcare around just fair contracting and notice, and increasing access and affordability. Very small things, letting our surgery centers do new procedures, so it's like half the price of going to a hospital, or getting a new treatment for some families in our community, a rare disorder called PANS and PANDAS, and the treatment that's necessary for that is very expensive, and it's not covered by insurance. So I'm advocating for that. I'm also, I'm continuing to advocate for criminal justice reform and second chances for people who are serving long sentences. Washington is one of the worst states in the nation as far as the long sentences and the disproportionality on Black and Indigenous people in particular. And I've been working with the Native American population actually for the last couple of years, the tribal sons that are at the Shelton prison, on a particular issue around going before a judge after you serve 15 years and to see if it still meets the interests of justice that you're still in prison. And then I have two voting bills. One is, people in our jails are allowed to vote, but they don't get their ballots because they're at jail. Wow. And so making sure that county auditors and county sheriffs are working together around the election time to bring the ballots there to the people who have their rights. And then people in prison right now still don't have their right. And that's the last kind of population in the carceral system in Washington that doesn't have a right to vote. And for me, this is very much about undoing past harms of racism. It was because of Jim Crow era laws that we disenfranchised people based on a criminal record. You could no longer do it based on skin color, right? So, but we know that large disproportionality of Black people are criminalized. And so, you can take away their right to vote because of the criminal record now instead. But I'm trying to undo that. And so I have two voting bills that are still in play, and I'm hoping to get those through. And then, I did have my bill that died yesterday around making sure that ICE, workers who signed it up after January 20th of 2025 could not just come and infiltrate, transition into becoming police officers in our community. But unfortunately, that bill died yesterday. So,
it did. Okay.
Yeah, so I'm very sad about that. And yeah, so but those are my bills. But I still am working in so many other ways to support others. Today, I was able to pull, even though I did it remotely because we're away from the Capitol, but I'm on the Rules Committee. And so we had a rules meeting today, and I was able to pull two bills. And, I heard from Addison Richards. He has one about, getting rid of the derelict vessels in our water. And his wasn't available, but I did pull my seatmate Greg Nance's bill.
Can you explain what pull a bill means?
Yeah, that means all the bills, when they make it through the policy and the budget committees, they come to the Rules Committee, where some of us, sit on the Rules Committee, and we get to decide which bills are actually going to go to the floor for a full vote. And so bills become available to be pulled. And I sit on the Rules Committee, and I'm also the Deputy Speaker Pro Tem, so I preside over the House floor. And I was able today to pull my seatmate Greg Nance's bill that he's been working really hard on to ensure that everyone that is in an apprenticeship program to become like a union worker, making sure that everybody has behavioral health training. Right. And the idea is that if we can help our workforce become more trauma informed and more, aligned with like self-care and more healthy, we'll have a decrease in mental health and substance use conditions, and just, also helping each other and building a better culture in the workforce. And so I was able to pull that bill. And then another one that impacts, because I also, represent three bases here. So I care a lot about veterans, and I sit on the Veterans Committee. And
we have a veteran here that actually has a question for you. I think you're going to love
wonderful, it. Wonderful. So, veterans.
We have two veterans here, actually.
They're really important, and they're part of our community. And so I pulled a bill that was really important to our veterans, and that is a compact to get licensures. You have a professional license, and say you get it in another state, or you're in the military, and
reciprocity.
You have reciprocity,
nice.
Right? And so intercompact, licensure. So I was able to pull a bill around that. So even if they're not my bills, I am working with a lot of people, and that's what the legislature is beautiful. It's a team sport. We're supporting each other, co-sponsoring each other's bills, and things like that. But I would say the priorities right now for me are the budget and ICE activity. And within the budget, though, I'm really laser focused on food, healthcare, and housing, because we are in a deficit, and I'm very worried about our unhoused neighbors, right? And so I care deeply. I've been there. I've been on Medicaid for more years than I haven't. I've used food banks, I know, and I don't want to lose these critical services when we are in a budget deficit, because I know people are barely hanging on.
Absolutely. And the furlough, man, it increased by so much.
It did. And yeah, my son is a shipyard worker, and he was impacted by that, and the government shut down, and, he, qualified for, food bank assistance, and he has my little grandson, and, so I care about a lot of things. And I do love the work, because we get to do a lot of different topics every day. So I'll say my other things, I'm fighting for capital budget investments in affordable housing here in Bremerton. There's a new one that hopefully is going to be at Crossroads Church on Fairgrounds Road. And it's going to be, new housing development for affordable housing and for people escaping domestic violence. And it's going to have childcare and partnerships with Coffee Oasis and with the YWCA. And I'm a big supporter of the St. Vincent de Paul Star of Hope. Been, really trying to do everything I can to support the advocates that are working to get a shelter here in Bremerton.
And we'll definitely talk about that a little bit more. Yeah, that's a big deal to me too.
Yeah, and it's scary that Salvation Army is going to close, and they've done so much for a long time with something that wasn't supposed to ever be a shelter. So anyway, I could go on and on. I care about our ferries, obviously, and making sure that those are functional and running. And And then we always have different projects that we help support. One of the capital budget projects I get to work on this session is getting a dog park in Bremerton as well.
Oh, okay.
And it's going to be named after Sherry Appleton, who was my predecessor.
Got you.
So that's one little fun thing I get to do. But there's also affordable housing project in Kingston that I'm advocating for initial funding to develop out there.
Oh, nice.
So we need it all around. I care a lot about the Paulsbo, the North Kitsap Recovery Center that's out there now. And I just came from lunch with our elected prosecutor where he was going out there today, but they've developed a new program in Paulsbo pre-arrest. So, and they just got their first person where law enforcement, instead of arresting a person for drug possession, gave them the number or the contact information, or actually drove them to the North Kitsap Recovery Center.
Oh, really? Wow.
Instead of arresting them.
Okay.
And they gave them the contact information, and they did show up within a week. So they said, if you show up within a week, we're not going to arrest you. We're going to give you services. And they showed up. And so it's a success story. And so our elected prosecutor, Chad Enright's very happy about this because he wanted a solution outside of just prosecuting and jailing people for drug possession. And because of legislation we passed and the money that we allocated towards these community-based resources, people are now getting treatment earlier, and instead of waiting until their case resolves, or, and it's also better because they don't get saddled with criminal records that then prevent them from getting jobs and housing and moving on with their life. So, I could go on. There's lots of things I'm passionate about, but
that's good. And it's important, right? So oftentimes I think, especially when we're speaking at city council or, at the county level, you got 3 minutes or 90 seconds, and it's just not enough to articulate your thought and have a complete thought. And even you face that same thing, right? So to have a space where you can do that, I think is really important. So let me go ahead and get into the questions. And remember what lens I'm looking at it in, right? And just as a reminder, everyone, please type your questions in the chat. We will have Q&A once I'm done with my questions, and we'll ask as many as we can for as much time as we have. And then, like I said, the rest will go to Tarra. But as you know, I run Gather Together, Grow Together, and primarily we provide transportation as an alternative to other modes of transport, right? Paratransit, Kitsap Transit can't do it all. We have various contracts and grants that we support our work, and taking folks to medical detox or dialysis or taking folks to work. Anyone can use our service. And what's so funny, when Trump wasn't the president, I say even Trump can use us, right? And it's a true story. Anyone can call us and use us. We take you to the airport in the middle of the night. We'll do whatever, right? Deborah Jackson has her African American Awards show every year, and we pick up her guests from the airport, and we take them around from their hotel into different places. So we do all these different things. We do community work through the churches and just whatever. So anyone can use us. 360-373-3000, shameless plug. And then we also provide transportation for the severe weather shelter. So we're working with the unhoused, we're working with healthcare, we're working with our homeless population, we're working with our addicted population, we're working with so many different populations. And they're all important to me, just as they are to you. Like I said, so anyone can use that. You don't need to be a black male in order to use that. But I am also a black male, and so that's a piece of advocacy. And I'll tell you in full disclosure, when you talked about coming on Friday, I was like, oh, well, what am I going to ask her? I'll just ask her all these general questions about the shelter and what's happening, here locally and some of the stuff in Olympia. And it's like, when you were on with Martita is talking about her community and immigration. And she's talking about all immigration, but particularly Spanish-speaking immigrants. And sometimes in the Black community, we kind of feel like we need to get away from advocating for ourselves and just always advocate for the group at large. And I do both, right? And so, but sometimes I do need to focus. And we saw that piece was missing. And so that's why we created the League of Black Male Voters. So my first question is this. We're going to kind of go away from criminal justice reform, but I do want to get into the housing and homelessness piece. I will wait on that one. No, you know what? I'll go into it now because some of the questions might come through. And then my trusty executive assistant who is producing the show today, if you want to throw the questions up, you can move the whole screen over here if you want. Then I can see the questions in the chat, or just give me a chance to get it over here. I'm just not ready yet. You can wait for a minute. But we were in city council last year, and the city had shared a stat that said 1 out of 11 Bremerton homeowners were Black, and that was the lowest demographic.
Mhm.
And when you think about the contributions that Blacks have made here in Kitsap County, in particularly Bremerton, you think of Loxie Egan, you think about our post office, you think about Mr. Roosevelt, who was recently deceased, Robert Body, Pastor Sam Rochelle. There's so many elder. Bishop, there's so many greats who are past but have made such a change and a difference in our community, helped build our community, helped build up the Navy and the shipyard, and our contemporary leaders now. The fact that we are not homeowners
Mhm.
is, quite frankly, I think it's a crime, right?
Mhm.
And our contemporaries have been fighting even for the cross burnings in Poulsbo a few years back,
Mhm.
right? So you have all those things. So Black men are overrepresented among the unhoused, yet underrepresented in homeowners. What policies are you backing to move Black men from shelters into home ownership, and not just temporary housing or vouchers?
Yeah. I think the biggest thing is you see the same disparities in education, and Black men are overrepresented in prisons but underrepresented in college degrees. I mean, it's all kind of interrelated, and for me it goes back to slavery and how Black people were brought here from other countries and made to perform labor for free and beaten and so many things. And so one thing I'm happy and proud of is supporting the Community Reinvestment Fund that just came through my committee this last week, where we initiated $200 million, a biennium into a fund that is administered by the Department of Commerce, that is looking to, and it's given to nonprofits that are led by and for, right? And it is really to respond to the war on drugs, but that is also disproportionately Black men that were criminalized in the war on drugs. And so kind of getting to the root cause, right? What is the root cause, and how can we fix all the inequities? So home ownership, thing that I've supported, and that really is about Black home ownership. So, I would say I also look at all of my work through a racial equity lens, because I know that, even when I was having lunch today with the prosecutor, and he brought his chief deputy who is over the juvenile justice work, and I reminded him, my son was 14 and he had made a mistake on the weekend. He went with some friends to the school, Olympic High School, when it was under construction. Him and his friends broke in, went in the gate, lit off the fire extinguishers, drew smiley faces on the walls.
Okay.
And as like a good mom, I brought him in on Monday morning to tell on himself. He got punishment, he got his video games taken away because somebody showed me on Snapchat. Monday morning, I took him into the school. I said, we're going to tell the principal what you did. You're going to clean this up, and then you're going to do another 20 hours of community service to clean up the rest, do extra things around the school. But that's not what happened, because there was sheriff in the school. Gotcha. As soon as he got there, we talked to the sheriff, was in the meeting. The sheriff did a referral to the prosecutor. And I remember calling that juvenile justice prosecutor and saying, please don't give my son a criminal record. I don't want him to not have a future. And he said to me, he says, Tarra, if I do that, and I don't do that for all the young Black boys that are, needing a second chance, we're going to ruin our disproportionality data and all this. I said, my son is Black. And he said, oh, okay. And he gave my son a deferment, right?
Mm-hmm.
And it's just, I would say in my everyday life, I'm thinking about the intersection of all of this, because if my son did get a criminal record, he wouldn't have been able to join the Marines, maybe, right? And he did join the Marines. And he's on his way to home ownership right now. I mean, he works at the PSNS, right? Doesn't have a criminal record. Mm-hmm. And he gave me a grandson. And but it starts right there. It starts in school. It starts before school. It's generational. And until we address root causes and help people get out of poverty, that's why I love the Covenant Homeownership Program, because when you do buy a house, your children will then benefit from generational wealth accumulation, because there's no better asset to have than your own home.
Right. Well, let
So-
me just say, a blind spot that a lot of people have is, well, hey, they were doing drugs or they were drinking alcohol. And when we talk about over policing, what we don't do is the police could go every Friday, Saturday, and Sunday night up to the sorority houses and the frat houses and catch a whole bunch of underage drinking and drug use and go ahead and hit them with criminal records and destroy their lives right off the bat. Are they doing what a black man or a black woman is doing, or someone else in their communities? Absolutely. But more often than not, they're charged with it and it changes their life. But with them, oftentimes you hear, well, you know what, they're going to college, we don't want to ruin their life, they're just being college students, yada yada yada, right? And so those are the things that I really want to bring awareness to, because you don't see that piece. And the other thing is we're having a conversation about justice impact and things of that nature, but people also need to realize that all black men aren't criminals. Often the numbers don't even bear that out when you actually look at the stats. It's also the same thing that the majority of black men are not fathers, right? So it's like, oh, black fathers aren't in the home, but of course, the CDC did a study and said that black fathers are actually the most involved with their children, but most people don't know that, right? We get the label of being deadbeat dads and we're not in the homes, and that's just not true, right? And again, most of us do not have fathers or have children, right? So I just wanted to share that out. So you said the Covenant program, and was there another one?
Yeah, the Covenant Homeownership Program and the Community Reinvestment Fund.
Community Reinvestment Fund, okay.
So the Community Reinvestment Fund is $200 million a biennium, and it was a one-time allocation, and right now we're working to make it in statute so it's ongoing, and it's a priority of the Legislative Black Caucus, which we now have 11 members of the Legislative Black Caucus in Olympia, which is the largest it's ever been, and they have a priority bills that they are pushing for, and the Community Reinvestment Fund is one of them. Alongside, they have adopted one of my bills around the second chance of resentencing, which is also, a priority of the whole caucus. I mean, right now, so hopefully we can pass that. But I wanted to say something about the bias, right? And we definitely need to keep having more stories shared and to break down that bias of, black men are not all criminals, and the over policing is true. I mean, I think that's why I'm so passionate about it, because I grew up in an over-policed community. My father is brown. He is Mexican and Spanish, and he was much, darker than me. But we lived in a predominantly black community in Stockton, California before I moved up here. And the police were just always in the neighborhood, always arresting my father, arresting my friends, but you're right. Same thing happens. And wealthy people are constantly in their homes using cocaine, and they're not getting arrested, right? So police are policing what's visible, and there's a lot to that. So, and it, just back to generational inequities and who has money and who doesn't. So it's kind of a race and class issue together. And
even though, and I agree with that, and there is a class separation, but even through that, you'll look. And even then, through class, through the racial lens, right? If you're black, you're likely to be more convicted. Now, you're going to get off more than a low income or a poor person in the community. One more question kind of in that lens. I work with a lot of social service providers, a lot of nonprofits, etc., and I'm in the streets directly. You've seen me in the streets, feeding folks, bringing my grills out to the literally to the street, right? And so I see so many black men in the street, but I seldom see those same black men eligible or receiving services, either due to drug convictions, violent crimes, non-custodial parents, their credit, or whatever the case may be. And so many housing dollars flow to developers and nonprofits, but they never seem to reach black male households directly, right? And so oftentimes a black male may be a non-custodial parent. I'm one of those, right? And so if you're paying child support, which most of us don't have any problem doing, but what that does is you are now supporting the household that the child is with the mother, but you also have a household to maintain as well. And so, you get kind of shamed in, well, you need to take care of your responsibilities. Like, well, I'm doing the best that I can, but everybody is struggling, talking about it's $1,000 on average per bedroom. And I don't make a livable wage to cover my own living expenses. And you just tell me, well, get another job, or I shouldn't have had a kid, or whatever, right? But I was married 17 years. So, what's the explanation there, right? But now you find Black men struggling, but you don't see them getting those services, and those services aren't necessarily geared toward them, especially because oftentimes they're a non-custodial parent. The state is doing better with that, but 50-50 custody, right at
Mm-hmm.
right at the gate, I think is important.
Mm-hmm.
But what's being done in that vein? Can you talk about that? And do you support any direct capital pathways for Black men to purchase property and down payment assistance and things like that specifically?
Mm-hmm. Well, the only one I can really think of is the Community Reinvestment Fund, and that is, I don't know the details. If it's, I mean, I don't believe you have to have a child or have a, custodial, like be the custodial parent for a child for that. Yeah, I guess I would have to know. I mean, I know like with TANF and things like that, you have to have a child in order to get, on TANF, I believe, a single person only gets like the ABD part, which is much less.
If they're eligible for it, right?
Yeah. But I guess I would have to know more like a specific program where, maybe a Black male is not being given certain benefits that maybe a white male is, or
no, it's not that. It's typically in that sense, it's just males in particular, right?
Males in particular.
So,
okay.
Let me paint the picture. So, we also belong to the Black Male Political Agenda, which is created by Dr. Tiason Johnson. He's a tenured professor down in California.
Mm-hmm.
And so there's over 10,000 of us Black males that have kind of signed on to that. And again, looking at that lens. And so, like, let's say in my situation, I'm married, there's a divorce, and then it's a custody issue, right?
Mm-hmm.
Let's say we were both low income
Mm-hmm.
individuals, and we're both working professionals, we both have master's degrees, kind of a different situation. But finances is one of the biggest things that we know that breaks up relationships.
Mm-hmm.
But then when that relationship is fractured and broken, that also creates more of a stigma and more of a fighting situation. So if you have two parents that are low income and suffering, why not give them both TANF? Why not give them both food stamps? Why not split the time between both parents evenly, right? So that they both can go to school and do some vocational things and build themselves up so they're both okay, right? And we know that oftentimes women have some other ways that they're able to make some money, that might be under the table by selling plates or braiding hair or doing some things that, and men can have some of those things too. But if you don't have those skill sets, all of a sudden you've got a problem, right? And the way society is, it's still more of let's say a patriarchy, for lack of a better word, right? You're in a relationship, and the man is typically the provider, is paying the bills or whatever the case may be. And so she may have another mate in this scenario that I'm painting, right? And so now another man is there that is helping support her. She's also getting, child support from the father if he's paying. She also is getting a subsidy, or she's working or whatever. So she has all these sources and family. And then the man doesn't necessarily have those, but then if he has another love life and another family, then now he's providing both ways, and it's almost impossible, right?
Well, I don't know. That's never been my experience. I've been the provider, so I wish I did have.
But that's why I'm here to share that experience, right?
Yeah, I know, and it can go both ways. And so what I think you're right, where it's the initial breakup and the custody and the time situation is really important, and we have a lack of legal aid for people, and most people can't afford an attorney when they're going through divorce and custody battles anyway. And we have like one, central like Northwest Justice Project, and if whichever parent gets there first and gets an attorney, then they can't help the other parent, and so that's a mess. But I think you're right. It's I mean, I've seen it other ways too, where like the man has a new partner, and maybe his new wife has more money, I mean, so
that's not typically the situation.
I don't know.
But I want you to stay and look at the lens that we're looking at, right? Because it's so quick to switch and say, well, me too. And it's I get the me too, but you've never heard our side. And so we're trying to advocate for our side.
I feel the pressure though. I feel the societal pressure. And I just think it's so messed up that like men are made both ways. I don't like how society, tries to make women like stay at home and be the domestic caregiver. Right.
Well, it's impossible.
Yeah.
In this economy.
Well, but this is society still thinks, but women should go to work and then come home and do all the domestic work too. Right. I don't think it's not good that society
or just not likely. I shouldn't say impossible.
Yeah, but it is nearly impossible to survive on one income in a family, period. But to put that pressure on you as men also, that you have to be the provider, right? You have to pay financially, right, for the child and that household, and then for your own house, your new household, whether you're single or partnered up or whatever. I mean, just those gender biases in our society need to go. And I think that's part of the feminist movement, is trying to break down those biases, not just because I as a woman don't want to be told I need to stay at home and barefoot and pregnant in the kitchen and cooking and cleaning, but also I don't like the pressure it puts on men either. I mean, I've been in relationships where, I tell the man, like, it's okay if you don't make as much as me. And he can't live with that. Right. And so literally, I mean, I am single, been single for a long time. And I was in love with somebody, and he couldn't handle the fact that he couldn't make as much as me or didn't have the status. And I'm like, I don't care about none of that stuff. Right. Yeah. Like, I'd rather be with you and spend my time, and I'll pay for what I can. And it doesn't matter. It's ours. Right. Right. But the society's pressures have put so much pressure on Black men in that realm. But so all I can do is say that I will try to, everywhere I see the bias, call it out, and think that
and that's why I want to highlight it and see where the advocacy is. And even if folks that are listening, you're like, hey, screw the man, you want to look at it through the lens of the children, right? Then we say that children need their fathers, right? But if the fathers aren't really able to be present because financially they're so stressed, or they're forced to work under the table, and it's driving them underground, and it's causing strife between the parents that are already no longer together and dealing with those things, if you created an even playing field, then that likely would benefit the child better, regardless of what household they're in. Absolutely. Right? And so oftentimes you get, oh, well, when you're at your dad, it's, you're at Disneyland, it's the weekend, fun house. And it's like, well, that's all dad can really do, is take you to the park or take you to Fi, and that's it, because that's all the resources that he has. So you go out to eat and the weekend's over, right? There's not a lot of quality time, there's, you're not getting ready for dinner and doing homework and just kind of doing those things during the week, right? Yeah. And those things kind of get taken for granted. All right, I appreciate that. I wanted to all right, so we've got some folks here. They're saying, I'm so grateful to both of you, Tarra and Marwan. I both know you. I see it. You gotta, let me read it first before you do it. I both know you to be people to foster conversation and get deep into the work and examining barriers. She also says barriers are so built in. I don't think they are a design flaw. They are part of the design. You both lead well into bringing us to places we can talk about all of this. And lastly, and shout out to Kelly, that's the homie. Being transparent with dignity and desire for justice is courageous and needed. Kelly's one of the hardest working people here in the community, doing a lot of good work. I won't say what she does, but she is on the front lines. You know who Kelly is?
Yes, haven't seen her for good people. Many years, but love her very much. Yeah.
All right. So, one of the things that I know that you're also supportive of is the Commission for Boys and Men. Can you talk about how that's going?
Yeah, I would say this year I think it's sponsored by Representative Byrd.
Okay.
And we haven't had.
And there used to be Lovick, right?
And and then he's over in the Senate, and he might still be sponsoring it over in the Senate. And I will say, when I first got to the legislature and it was an idea floated, a lot of people were not really open to it, right? Because they're like, oh, but it's the women that have, need a special commission, because the women have been the ones who have been, victimized more and not given the same rights and things like that. And I will say, history is history, right? And that might be true. And women did have to fight for it to be, get their voting rights, sooner, and become property owners. And there's a lot of that. And we can still work to correct that inequities too, while we also talk about the unique inequities and biases that men face. If we want, everyone to be healthy, then we need to have spaces where everyone can talk about the unique needs of their particular identity, whether that's gender or race or even lived experiences. I started several support groups for formerly incarcerated people because of the criminal record being a stigma to certain things. But I can imagine, being a man, like you said, your rate of prostate cancer, or there's other types of medical issues that are unique or more prevalent in men, right? But there's also these societal pressures that you don't necessarily have space to talk about. And what if you can address some of that through policy change, then I would love for you to have a place that you can, discuss barriers that are unique to men or unique to Black men. Maybe that can be a sub, committee of the Boys and Men's Commission. But I want my sons to grow up healthy and happy and functioning and feel whole and be able to live their best lives. I want that for every human being.
Mm-hmm.
And so I had to kind of learn a little bit more, change my, thinking, and also hear other perspectives to get to where I am today, where I'm like, no, it's okay, you guys. Like, women, it's okay.
Yep.
You don't have to feel that we're taking away from the women and girls commission, because we have that. We're going to keep having that, right? And boys and men do have unique needs that they need a place to also talk about. And it's not going to be, that boys and men need to make more than women. No, it's that how can we all be equal and all have our needs met? So I'm good with it now. And yeah.
Good. And, a special shout out to Blair, who's been championing this for like the last 3 or 4 years. I think this is year 4. And his tenacity is just tremendous. And he's done hard work. He's been out here to meet me. I've been there, and he's just been working hard to push that through. And one thing is, as you're listening to this, you may be on one side or the other. You may be in the middle. What I'm hoping is that you will give grace to the message and really try to hear through and not try to win points. For me, as far as the Commission for Boys and Men, it's not a zero-sum game. We're not saying that you need to take resources from girls and women. We're not saying that you need to ignore them. We're just saying that you need to pay attention to what's going on with boys and men. Mm-hmm. You see these things being talked about more in social media, on mainstream news, and in other spaces, but these are things that we've been talking about for decades. And if you think about it from a feminist viewpoint and the patriarchy, if you think the patriarchy is something negative, I don't happen to believe that. I think there are some toxic things in there. Mm-hmm. But I think, masculinity and patriarchy, I think there is a place for those things. Mm-hmm. And people can disagree with that. But at the same time, we have to talk about and look at how it impacts folks. So if you're going to demonize boys who are just boys, mm-hmm. and you're not going to address the issues, and that perpetuates or that instills in them those negative attributes of patriarchy or whatever, toxic masculinity, whatever you want to call it, then wouldn't you want to address those things so that those things aren't there, right? Yeah. So then you've got some, even if you're serving yourself, you end up serving them by doing that, right? And answering those questions and looking into it. And I think the commission is very important for that. So
that's exactly how I got around to it. Was also, really? I was thinking, there's healthy masculinity, right? Mm-hmm. And how are we teaching young men to have healthy masculinity instead of toxic masculinity, right? And there's never, I go to the men's prison, I go to women's prison, almost all the women talk about like they're victims of sexual abuse. Go to the men's prison, they're overwhelmingly victims of sexual abuse too, but they've never been told it's okay to talk about it, right? And there are so many things that men are told to keep inside and not talk about, and then it comes out in more like violence or anger. And so if we can help men have a safe place to talk about those things and then bring policy solutions too, I'm for it. So.
All right. Hey, everyone, if you're just tuning in, you're watching my interview with Tarra Simmons. You're watching that on the Conduit Podcast Networks. Thank you so much for joining us. Again, like, subscribe, and share, and ask your questions in the chat, and we'll get to as many as we can. I've got one more question under education and workforce development before we move on. Most workforce programs train Black men for labor, but not typically ownership. What are you doing to ensure Black men are preparing for business ownership, skilled trade especially in contracting and not just entry level jobs. I'm gonna give you an example for a fellow person that we know, who happens to be on that wall up there, in the first one, because he was the original board member on G2. You see him up there, Drayton? You sit right next to me. Yeah. So, I contract with the city, I contract with the county, I contract with healthcare agencies. I've got plenty of them, right? But I don't see a lot of fellow folks that look like me that are getting contracts, right? And so oftentimes we hear, well, we put it up for bid and there were no, Black businesses that applied, right? It's like, well, how did you look? Right? How did you get the information out? And oftentimes, it's like, oh, we put postcards out or we put it in the Kitsap Sun. It's like, well, I don't read the Sun. So, how do we get that? An example, last night in city council, Denise Frey lamenting about the shelter that's supposed to be in her district, and literally right across the street is the rejuvenation center that Drayton Jackson has founded. And what she was talking about was it's easy to get capital money to build and to remodel and do things like that. And they got that money. However, after all these years, they don't have the money for their operating budget. And so this is what she was talking about. And unfortunately, she even used the word blight, which I definitely disagree with. But she is now against the shelter there, and we'll get to that. But that is one of those things, right? So it's like, okay, great. He got the capital money to build and to remodel, but now there's no operating budget. But then you look at some other folks, like let's say in Eagles Wings or some other entities, the 0.1%. We tried for 2 years. We won't apply anymore, and that's a whole nother question. There's no point for us to even do that. And so we receive funding through the 0.1%, but we receive it through pass-throughs from other organizations, right? And so just kind of going through the exit interview on why we didn't get funding didn't make any sense. But neither here nor there. The fact still remains is there are hardly any Black contractors that are out here. And so what are you doing, if anything, or do you know of anyone that's advocating to build up Black businesses so that we can be self-sufficient and grow and empower our own community?
Yeah, absolutely. I think there's two different questions. One is about, well, I think three. One is about operating budgets, and that's true. But the first one about just business ownership in general and like learning the fundamentals. Like I went to law school, it did not teach me how to own a law firm. Okay. So I'm with you, and I've been having to learn things like, oh, the Department of Revenue and the IRS, how to get my EIN number. And like, I mean, I've gone through some learning on my own just on that. But I think, one of the good like benefits that we have had, which might be going away right now, is the small business advisor out of the Western Washington University. And it was Joyce Oswald. I don't know if you know. She
that SCORE?
Great. No, it wasn't SCORE. It was like, it was something in our community. She would work with individuals who were learning the fundamentals about small businesses. Gotcha. And she was a small business advisor.
Well, see, that's just my point, right? I'm asking you a question because I never heard about it.
Oh my
we
gosh,
turned 8 years old on Super Bowl Sunday. No idea.
Yeah. So, and I still get emails. I think there is a person that has been taken over. So I should follow up and give you this resource so you can give it to other people.
Hey, thank you.
So Western Washington University had a small business person. Joyce retired just at the end of November, but somebody else has taken over. But they will sit down with you and tell you about the fundamentals of small business, how to create your plan, all this stuff. So that's like more for like probably a for-profit as an LLC or something like that, as opposed to nonprofit. Now, nonprofit management is a lot. Board. I mean, I did that too, so that was a lot. But as far as like becoming competitive for grants, there are a couple of things. First of all, I want you to know, like, I think my second session, I did a proviso to the greater Kitsap Chamber of Commerce it was $250,000 to give $10,000 grants to small business owners in Kitsap County who are from historically marginalized communities. Okay. So through that, there was, a lot of leeway to help these small businesses get a little something to build some capital in their small businesses. Like I remember Sarah Borden, a woman who I was in prison with, got one for her hair, her salon called Ride or Die.
Yep. Shout out to Ride or Die.
Yeah. So, and it helped her. And then they had like a cohort where they came together and invested in these emerging business owners and teaching them some fundamentals and give them a little bit of capital for maybe website or some marketing expenses or something like that. So that was good. That was one thing that I did. But right now with this community reinvestment fund, we're working together to really make sure that the Department of Commerce, when they oversee it and give out the money, are also providing technical assistance and support, because we want it to be for by and for led orgs, right? And we know that not everybody has the technical experience or skills, to write these grants, to manage these grants. Not everybody has that business. They have great passion, ideas, connection to
the
work,
idea,
the
they're
people.
the creatives.
Yeah, but not the technical skills necessary. So making sure that that's embedded in those programs at the state level. I wouldn't give up on the 1/10 of 1%. Like, I don't know the politics of the county level, who sits on that board or anything like that. I just know my experience as a nonprofit director and somebody who built, it took years to become competitive for larger grants. I was doing the, little small Seattle Foundation, little Initai ones, little, until I positioned the organization to become competitive for the larger ones and for state grants, right? It takes a lot of learning.
Well, let me just say, because I don't want to speak ill of the 1/10 of 1%. And we have received, plenty of 6-digit, grants in our tenure with them. And I'll just explain, quickly, because we do grants and contracts. Their issue was literally they didn't know how we were going to animate or separate those who we were transporting that fit under the 1/10 of 1% versus those that were just taking a ride to the airport or taking a ride to work that weren't doing that. It's like, how do you do that? How we do it now, right? We have plenty of contracts. We're not going to put someone's dialysis bill on, Salish or KMH, right? It's like, what? And so that was the reason why we didn't make it to the third round. That after the second year, it was like, okay, all the agencies they're giving money to probably already contract with us anyway. So that it's unfortunate because they're going to use the money how they use it and they're going to squeeze it. We can do more if the money came to us and we can provide more, get new vehicles and all that stuff. But I digress. But that's just one of those things. Is there anything that like the foundation could do to find some operating budget? And in terms of ride or die, when that money came around and went out, I don't think I heard anything about it. And as the conduit, as the media, that's part of our job is to put that information as it comes out. And so I that totally was missed. And that's part of the point, right? Is sometimes those resources are out there, but we're not getting access to them to even have the opportunity to apply, right? Because we just don't know. It's like, well, if you just look, it's like, believe me, we look really hard. The last thing I'll say is you are in everyone out there that's thinking about doing it, you're in a very special place right now because you have AI and ChatGPT and Gemini and all the rest can do a lot of work for you and make things a lot easier. But again, everybody has access to it, so it's going to make it even harder for you to progress. So if you're thinking about it, start today. Don't wait till tomorrow. It's magical on those things that it can do. Get you a good team around you, use your resources, ask questions, and seek information.
Yeah. As far as operating expenses for like the Rejuvenation Center, I don't think
or anyone. I could use some operating expenses. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah. I mean, only like Department of Commerce, will have and does have grants that I know G2 would fit in like the community reinvestment funds. So actually, I think there's an open process right now for the Washington State Department of Commerce for community reinvestment funds.
All right, y'all.
Saw it recently. So you want to check that today. Go on the website, Department of Commerce, and see open grant opportunities and see when the community reinvestment fund grant closes. Because I did see it recently. So I know I don't know when it closes, but that would be something that I think you would be very well positioned to potentially apply for. Same with the Rejuvenation Center. But as far as like, they're the grant opportunities are out there, but there's nothing that I know of specifically for operating expenses from the state for like a homeless shelter or for a day center or for a community center for seniors, because I have a couple of those that I really love.
And we have an aging community here.
And so I'm right now trying to get capital for the Silverdale. The vision is to have a Silverdale Community Center for seniors that also has medical PCHS medical care involved. And I'm looking for capital funds. Capital funds are so much easier because it's a one-time infusion, right? When private nonprofits or other folks, want like sustainable ongoing funding from the state. We can't promise that because things dry up and, you know, it's just, yeah, we have to fund, education, healthcare,
Yeah, no,
food.
absolutely.
So,
And from a healthcare standpoint, one of the reasons that I wanted to start G2, teaching at the college and there's homeless folks that are attending college at the same time. But, being a working professional, I have back surgery every year or so.
mm,
And that requires a driver because you're sedated,
mhm,
right?
mhm,
And the problem is you can't use a cab
mhm,
or
mhm,
Uber for those things. And my friends are all professionals.
mhm,
So I can't ask them to take off work a day
mhm,
to take me home. And so that was one of the reasons why we got into transportation. So it's not just for those that have,
mhm,
I mean, that's part of transportation equity as well, right?
mhm,
It's not just low income folks that can't afford a car. If you know the bus system, the ferries out here in
mm,
Kitsap Transit, it is spread out and
mhm,
it is difficult to serve their whole community in an effective way and with the cost that's associated with it. And so that's one of the reasons why we wanted to get it. And that's not a black issue or a white issue. That's just an issue for everyone, right?
mhm,
So that's one of the reasons why I got into it. Yeah, she talked about it yesterday. In fact, she called it Black was disappointing. But if they had some operating funds a few years ago and carried through, we might not be having the challenges we have with trying to get this shelter right now because we'd have a day center that was up, functional, and operating and
mhm,
being able to support this population that so desperately needs it.
mhm,
But let me go ahead and move on from that. I do want to touch on immigration, and we're going to get on the other things. So one of the things this is a long paragraph that I want to kind of state. When you look at the highest voting percentages of black men and black women who voted for Trump in this or for against Trump in the last election, and pretty much all elections for the Democratic candidate, either it was Biden or Obama or Trump the other time, we lead in the highest percentages, both black men and black women, regardless of who's in office. The problem is what we hear is we can't let so and so into office, right? That's what we heard. Can't let Trump into office. We gotta do this. We have to ensure, he wins another term. That's what we heard
mhm,
with Obama, and then he'll do things for us. Up, the midterms are coming up, and it's too important for identity
mhm,
politics, and on and on. We hear all these different excuses in the black community, especially black males. Ultimately, we experience, at the minimum, benign neglect from the party and every other demographic, whether it be our LGBT brothers, women's issues, our immigrant families, you name it. Folks are demanding and action is being taken right here to ICE, and hey, we don't want folks that are being working for ICE to come and work for our law enforcement. So action is but we just continue to seem to be put on the back burner, right?
mhm,
And we don't want a committee to analyze reparations again, right? We know this country owes, it's like pay what you owe.
mhm,
Everyone else is getting reparations. Countries and individuals are receiving reparations that we didn't do any harm to, right?
mhm,
And but we still get maybe at best hearings, right?
mhm,
So what kind of changes can we do to start helping our community? And we understand that the things that the LGBT community, women, immigrants, all the special interest groups are facing are no doubt dire and
mhm,
important.
mhm,
But at the same time, we've been facing these things for decades with no resolution, right? And it's painful because we have notoriously stood by the side of and oftentimes championed,
mhm,
even if that group might not be out because they're fearful,
mhm,
we've been championing cause for them. And yet we find ourselves not being advocated for and never getting, we always keep holding the bag. So, whether we recapture the House or the Senate or the White House, what are you going to do about helping and who are our allies in Olympia that are going to help the black community, in particular black men, address some of these issues where we do feel like it's benign neglect at best. And it's like, hey, you need to come alongside. We got to do this for the Democratic Party, and
mhm.
this is how it's going to be. And then when we do it, and then let's say Obama has all three, right?
Yeah,
And then nothing happens. It's like,
I know.
yeah, what's going on? And Minneapolis is really emblematic of that, right? So we had George Floyd be murdered, and then we had a bunch of other police shootings, and we tried to get rid of qualified immunity, and nothing happened. And now a couple white people get killed, and all of a sudden it's like, oh, we got to abolish ICE, and we got to do all this, and this stuff has to happen now. And it's like, but we've been saying that for a decade. Like,
Mhm,
seriously? So we feel some kind of way about that. Can
Oh
you
yeah,
respond to that?
absolutely. I will say, first of all, I'm not like a party purist
Hmm.
because I see flaws in both parties. I really don't like the two-party system, um, but I am also disappointed in Obama and particularly like what he didn't do for criminal justice reform. I will say Trump, I really despise him, and he also has my friend, a black woman, as his pardon czar that he gave clemency to when Obama wouldn't.
He also funded
Um,
HBCUs. I mean,
you
there's
know,
good and bad
there's like
on,
yeah,
and
in
not sound
both.
like Trump. There's
So
good and bad people on both
well,
sides.
no, I'm
But,
just saying it's messy.
hmm
All politics is so messy. I think the local more power you can build at the local level for specific things is great. I will say my first session was right after George Floyd, and we passed 13 police reform bills. That my first session, and it was led by Jesse Johnson, a black male from Federal Way, amazing colleague of mine. He was probably my favorite at that time when I joined, and we, banned, chokeholds and, vehicular pursuits and use of force, changed the standards. We did a lot.
vehicular pursuits are back now.
Well,
But,
yeah,
yeah.
I know. I didn't go for it. I know. But
Just had to mention it, but
I
yeah,
know.
you got it. You
But
got it. And then,
but
yes,
yeah, but we did at least we created a
the fight continues.
process for policing. We did a lot, around police reform. Then we did not get qualified immunity because I would open up the cities to so much lawsuits, and so that's a continued fight. And even if people are calling for it now, they probably won't get it. You're seeing at the federal level, they're saying they're not going to get it, though, right? And which sucks because people should be made whole when they are harmed by government, right? And so
So why
but
not do something like doctors do? They carry some pretty expensive insurance,
mhm,
definitely, our law enforcement, they need to be paid for the dangerous job that they do. We do need more law
mhm,
enforcement. We do need training, but we do need qualified immunity to
mhm,
go away. If you do something wrong, then and you should have a higher burden
yeah,
of duty because you are protecting us,
yeah,
right? And so you have a higher responsibility. So that means if you do something wrong, yeah, you should stay in trial just like everyone else. And man, it should be put you under the jail if you were
yeah.
found to have done something egregious,
Yeah,
right?
and as a lawyer, if I do something to harm my client, I have malpractice insurance. As a healthcare professional, I have malpractice insurance. Same thing. I know. So
Yeah.
I
So pay
think
them,
no,
give
I
them the
do.
insurance, and then let the cities not be responsible in that
Yes,
way, or not to the point where it's going to cripple the city,
yes,
and then you get rid of them. And then it's like, hey, if you got a bad cop, bad firefighter, a bad nurse, a bad doctor, bad
leave it,
whatever,
leave
you're not
them.
going to go to the next city over the next state and get a job
Exactly,
anywhere. You're done, right?
exactly. Yep.
You need to. You don't have a right to do that. That's a privilege,
Yeah, I
right?
agree. I agree. But I think police officers were able to organize a lot and say, we don't want to have to be afraid that we're going to lose our homes or whatever, or something a decision we make in the moment, and we're protecting ourselves, whatever. So, I think more conversation needs to happen, and we need to pass it. But I think what you need to do is potentially build more power. So I do recommend, partnering with maybe the NAACP, who has some power and some actual advocacy in Olympia. Shalee Anderson or Seacrest is her last name now, is the president of the Washington State, NAACP. So, Robert and Shalee know each other well.
Okay.
And, they do come to Olympia some, but there are other groups. There's the Washington Build Back Black Alliance. I think it's Paula Sardinia's. We have a legislative Black Caucus, like I said, 11 members now. And Christine Reeves, your colleague of mine from Federal Way, is the president of that right now, or the chair.
Now, are there any organizations that aren't black that kind of feel the way that I'm feeling? Because I don't think that this
Absolutely.
is a black
No,
issue at
no,
all,
I
right?
don't think so either. And so, yeah, the
I've seen
ACLU.
plenty of videos
So,
of white men and white women getting brutalized by
oh,
police.
yeah.
It's like, wow, if they're gonna do that to you, well, hey,
Oh,
you
yeah.
know.
So on the qualified immunity issue, yeah,
Mhm.
the ACLU of Washington's been fighting for it. Several other groups that care about civil rights. And this is a time where I feel like we have a lot of synergy to build a multiracial civil rights movement, that is really centered around all of our collective kind of like needs to be protected in our communities. It doesn't matter right now, ICE, a lot of people, right? And so we can build on that. I thought you were talking in particular about Black community and how do you build power. in general, in Olympia and who's your allies.
Yeah, no, I do want to know that,
yeah.
but across, because it's not going to just be Black groups that push it over, right?
No. And so right now on the qualified immunity issue, I say we have a ton of different advocacy. I mean, you see even retired white people that are nurses and Indivisible, for example, North Kitsap Indivisible. I go up there on Sunday mornings at 11. They do a little walk around, twice downtown Tulsa. 300 people a couple weeks ago, and I cannot tell you, I was almost in tears. So I saw people firemen like walking around with their shirts that say "Ice Out." I was just like, this is. It made me want to cry because I was so happy to see people who hardly any people of color, and they're fighting up for civil rights. And I'm like, yeah, this is a time in history where we can do that if we believe and if we actually put our the things that would keep us separated, put that shit to the side right now, right? Come together on a common issue, which is the protection of all of us against a fascist regime. Like we can build on that. And so it makes me proud when I go there on Sunday mornings at 11 a.m. You should come sometime.
All right.
You should.
Yeah, come. I had to bring my cameras and get some shots up there.
It's a bunch of like seniors and older people and women and men and like people that you wouldn't imagine being out in the streets standing up for immigrants right now, but they're standing up for civil rights.
Yeah.
So anyway.
Well, and we'll have to ask a question. It's a trigger warning to everyone. We'll have to answer the question later. We don't have time today, but why there isn't more Black faces in marches right now? Most people are ignorant as to what that is. So we'll talk about that another time.
Yeah.
But again, if you're just tuning in, we want to thank you for tuning in. We want to go to the questions in there. I see an HB question that was in the chat. But before we do, I want to go local because this is super important to a lot of folks. There was an article that came out in the Sun, and I believe it was yourself, Tarra Simmons, and maybe Jane Rebelowski, that at the last minute had saved some funds to keep Salvation Army open, which is a big deal. And full disclosure, I'm on the board for Salvation Army. And so that was great because we need our shelter. And we need our severe weather shelter, and we just came through a really frigid cold streak, and we may not be out of it. However, as you said at the top of this program, this was not designed. Salvation Army wasn't designed for that. And through COVID, they have been doing a yeoman's job of doing the heavy lift there. But we need a shelter here in Bremerton. Folks that don't know, over in Jennifer Chamberlain's district, over there behind the swing set place over there, Petco and Goodwill was the spot for the first one. And the way I understand it is the owner wanted to get double for the property, which, the government cannot do that. So that went away. And then the next option was here across the Rejuvenation, across the street from SARS on Sheridan and Wheaton Way. And right now, Bremerton Housing Authority, KCR, and St. Vincent de Paul all came together and said we could provide a shelter option. BHA bought the property. They're ready to go. And now in the 11th hour, City Council is not wanting to fund it and kind of go away from that. It wasn't the mayor's idea to do that in the first place. He wanted an option on Kitsap Way. But here this was. They went with this option. The property is built. They're ready to go. They've been coming to City Council and speaking. And now City Council looks like they're going to pull the plug on this. And they're coming up with, a lot of different reasons, whatever that is, whether it's zoning, it's permits, it's safety, it's you name it, right? They've got all these things. And, just a few things to say before I turn it over to you. We have to do something about our homeless population, right? We have to do something about our addiction, right? Our mental health. We don't have what we used to have in decades past, where there were places for folks to go, and we supported that, we funded that. So we have to lean in. I know there are a lot of NIMBYs, right? I don't want a shelter in my neighborhood. And again, I live right across the street from the college, so I'm in the thick of things, right? I live right on the other side of Wheelerville, which was where the homeless encampment was on ML King and for the Barbara Williams Center. Shout out to Barbara Williams Center. So I live there, right? Yeah. I have homeless individuals that I work with all the time. They come to my home. I've done a lot. So, and again, that's not for everyone. It's not required for everyone to do. However, We need a shelter. It's got to go somewhere in this county, and we've got a viable spot. And the only way to start the process of getting folks into one spot, getting them services, getting them the help that they need, and also the ones that are suffering addiction, to get them away from the predators that are in and amongst them, selling drugs to them, and alcohol, pimping them out, having them do sexual favors for drugs and violence and everything else. Move them away so that these folks can actually get healthy, get stabilized, and get their life back, right? We always say, no one plans to be homeless and be addicted, right? And here they are. This is where they are. Again, we have two veterans in the audience that are big advocates for, especially our homeless veteran population, and that's disproportionate and unacceptable. And so, it is. What do you know as far as where it stands now on the shelter? Is there anything that you can do to put your thumb on the scale to encourage this to go forward? City council makes the permitting law, so if you need to change the permit or change the zoning, then change it. Do what you got to do. Have you had any recent conversations? Is there anything that you can do, because we so desperately need this shelter?
Yeah, thank you. That's a lot. So I was never involved in this because it is like a local issue before. The only way I got involved is I was literally on my cruise during the end of December, and I was like in the works. And I read that the Salvation Army was closing during the daytime as of January 1st. I was like, no, this can't be, for them. And then it was so cold. My mom was calling. I was with my mom, and she was calling back home. And right now it was like 30 degrees out. And I'm like, this can't happen. Like, no. And then I had just visited the Martin Williams Center, the Catalyst School there, and was talking to them about the folks that are outside and stuff, and how they're teaching compassion to the students and stuff. Anyway, and so then I started having some conversations trying to just save the shelter from being open during the day. And found out like after the fact, I didn't need to do the budget request. The county actually just paid that 3 months for January, February, March. So it's open during the day right now. So the county did it out of reserves. So right now the shelter or Salvation Army is going to close during the daytime, probably March 31st, right? So anyway, I got involved, but I also, I know Joe Crane and Tony Ives and Monica from PMHS, and then I got to know Jill from BHA through this process and started, talking with them. And I'm trying to support as best I can. And I completely agree with you that we have to have a shelter. Salvation Army needs to close. It's not the place, and they're going to close. And that's like 92 years, I think, right now. And there is a little bit of money going to Eagles Wings to do some fix up. So they'll have like 40 beds out in Forest somewhere. The coalition of the partners that came together to get the money for this land doesn't even need a permit, though, to open just an emergency shelter, right? They can do that. They can do that right now. Like, they have the money. They have the land. What it is right now is, they really want, well, BHA in particular, because they are in relationship with the city of Bremerton in a unique way. I think, they're commissioners, there's commissioners on the BHA board. And I don't know exactly the legal term of the relationship. I think maybe BHA works for the city or somehow legally tied to the city. Okay. So if they're feeling like they're going to be adverse to the city,
Gotcha.
They don't want to do something that the city doesn't want them to do.
Right. So they're not going to just go and do it without the city's blessing.
Yes.
And I don't know the relationship. I was on that board a number of years ago, and I don't remember what that is, but I mean, that makes sense, right? You're a partner. You got a relationship, and you don't want to just go, we don't care what you think, we're just going to go.
Right? Yeah. And so I think, and I would say, like, St. Vincent doesn't have that kind of like legal entanglement with the city.
Gotcha.
They can do like that. And I think KCR might have more of an interest in Kitsap mental health too. They work with the city on so many other projects and so many other things. They don't want to do something that the city doesn't want, right? I don't think from what I understand, there is a legal need for like some changes if they were to put the tiny houses around the shelter, which is what's it called? QUAD, some kind of stand up emergency shelter.
Oh, yes.
Closet or
It
something like
is.
that.
Yes, it is.
Okay,
HP.
so that thing I think is they don't need any actual like legal changes or zoning changes or anything like that to do that, right?
Gotcha.
So they could, but they don't want to because they don't want to not do something. They want the city to come around to being a partner. So all I know is I've tried to watch thanks to the conduit and your Facebook. It's like easy because I've tried to go on the city's website and like find the meeting link. And I'm like, I'm like driving home from Olympia and I can't be doing all this. I'm like, oh, Marwan, there we go. Thank you, Marwan. So I watched the study sessions. I did not catch the city council meeting from last night, so I'm going to go back and watch now that you told me that. And I'll go to BCAT for that because I know. But I'm trying to watch and be as helpful as I can be. As far as having conversations, I did see where the county commissioners were down in Olympia this week, and so I briefly talked to Katie Wilson about it because Katie has been supportive of this and helped. When I was on my cruise and calling everybody from the water in St. Thomas, I was like, we cannot let this shelter close during the day. It's freezing. You know what I mean? Katie was one of the people who was like from the county level being as helpful as she can with me, getting Kirsten Jewell on the phone and Doug Washburn and like saying, okay, how about if we shift money here and you can do this? So right now it does seem more political than legal. I don't think they need a legal change. They don't want to be adverse to their partners. And so I did watch Jen Chamberlain's little community meeting that she had at her coffee shop. And I saw Jane Romanowski was there and advocates. And I think, that is the place people need to advocate to is the city. I would say some people are more receptive to certain types of advocacy than others. I have tried to counsel people like, do you want to be right or do you want to be effective, right? Like, so sometimes I think showing up and calling them names or, calling them out and stuff, it might cause more people to kind of dig in more on something when what we want is them to open their hearts.
And I agree, but there's both sides to it.
know,
When you've been advocating for years
I
and it just seems like it's falling on deaf ears, it's like, look, you've known that this was an issue. I've been screaming from the mountaintops, like, hey man, COVID is over and these funds are going to run out. I feel like we're in the sandwich board. And I'm like, the end of the world is nigh, and here it is. And it's like, I've been telling you this for years, and here we are. And so I think that's how those folks are feeling. They're passionate. It's like, wanted you to do something, we want you to do something, and now you're saying that you don't want to do something. It's like, we got to do something, right? And I'll say for those that are like, look, you know what, maybe they brought it on themselves, or that's not my responsibility, or I'm struggling, right? Those folks are using emergency rooms as their primary health care. That's costing us a lot of money. It's costing our law enforcement a lot of money. Our fire department, if there's fires, right? There's a lot of resources that are going to that. And we're going to spend the money either way. So would you rather waste the money doing it that way, or would you rather provide support and services, which is going to be cheaper to get folks off and more stabilized and reduce our homelessness?
I agree with you 100%. And also, it's going to cost us more, but we're also going to lose $1.5 million if we don't spend it by the end of this year from the ARPA funds that have to be expended by December 31st, right, from the county, which they've set aside for a shelter option. We're also going to be not in compliance with any comprehensive plan that the county and the city have to develop on how many shelter beds you have. In addition to the increased costs towards all the services, right? But also, some people really care about FIFA soccer. I really don't, but anyway.
So we're going to disappear our homelessness for soccer?
Yeah, exactly. So,
California did that.
But if that helps people move them to doing what's right, I'm like, hey, guess what? You're going to have this influx of tourism downtown, right? You want downtown to become developed more. You want it to be nice and clean and all this. Okay, well, we have the perfect location for people to actually go get their needs met too. Right?
And let me just say,
that can help move people. Say it. You want downtown to not have people outside sleeping outside when FIFA comes. We have a great opportunity right now if we get going. It's only going to take like 60 days to get that emergency shelter up.
And for those of you that don't frequent downtown, because I'm one, and my business used to be downtown. Now we're no longer down there. We're across the bridge now. But not only that, but if you looked, once the severe weather shelter closes and they close Tent City, what happened? Everyone migrated up down Wheaton Way all the way to Rydell, right?
Mhm.
So that's what happens. There's going to be a migration, and they're going to push them up in a way, and they're going to come into your neighborhood anyway. So why not create a shelter system, provide services, and have folks in one place, and reduce what
Yeah.
we're facing. Right. That's
And I love the
pretty good.
vision, and it does have all of the things, and it has a fence around it, and like security. And so I understand.
And people say, "Oh, there's
Yeah,
a school and there's kids," and but that's
that's the
everywhere.
school and kids right
It's
now.
gonna have to go. Yeah, right.
Right
They're all
now.
over the place right now, right? We're seeing
Well,
an increase of people that are jaywalking and getting hit by cars and
yeah,
all kinds of different things. So
yeah.
I will ask you. I mean, I would love for you to talk to our city council as the state
I do.
representative and
I
say,
do.
hey, yeah, you also
I
live
have
here as
been.
well,
Yep.
and just say, guys, you got to lean in. We don't want to lose this money. I think what Denise was trying to say was, hey, look, with the foundation, they had their capital budget, but then they don't have the operating. So if we give you the 1.5 million, and then now you don't know how you're going to get, I think they were saying 3 million to operate annually, where you're going to get the money. You know what? That's tomorrow's problems. Right now, we need to get this thing off the road, off the ground, and then we can revisit that. Maybe it's increasing 0.2%, right? So that we can do that
Yeah.
and house our unhoused. Let's go ahead and get to some questions in here. Joe Walter started off saying no show. We started late, but we answered that. We've got M. Seal says awesome 1609. Friends of Smith Cole, loud and clear. Friends of Smith Cole says ARPA funding for the hybrid shelter. Do you know anything about the ARPA funding?
Yeah, that's the 1.5 million that
That's the
they're going
1.5.
to lose if they don't use it by the end of the year.
Okay.
Yeah.
We have Act Conservative Activism says
Mhm.
convicted felon in all caps. I'm reading that because again, this is what it
Right in my
is.
face.
She doesn't hide from that. It
Yeah.
is what it is. Friends of Smith Cole. And again, what I say to that is, so do you want folks to not make a gainful living? And then if they can't pay their bills, then what are their options, right?
Right.
So again, those numbers increase. There's going to be more of them than you, and everyone's not behind the gated community, and you got to leave your gated community. So
Yeah.
we got to do something. Friends at Smith Cove, here's my comment showing council a hybrid. Let me just go ahead and click that. Let me put that on the screen there. See what she did. I can read it. Council hybrid shelter must be prohibited from Harrison Heights. This is what Denise was saying. I believe Simmons. Sorry, guys. I'm trying to look at this on the phone. Can you perhaps turn that around so I can see it? And then just scroll it down. Go into the chat. Act Conservative Activism Simmons is subject to yet another ethics investigation. Again, that information is there. I think that has been thoroughly addressed. So I'm not going to go into that there. You can see that in the Kitsap Sun and other places. I think that has been resolved. I'm at what right? Okay. All right. Each felon has to draft bills, including the actions of law enforcement. Uh, I'll let you answer that. What I see in that is, hey, you know what? You're a taxpayer.
see.
If you paid your time, then you're supposed to. The whole point of incarceration was it was rehabilitation, right?
Yeah.
So once
And
you're done, you're done. You go back to being a regular citizen.
you're supposed to, but that doesn't happen. But I did go before the state Supreme Court and have every, like, part of my life examined and got my law license. And so I think I have rights to drop bills because first I'm a lawyer and I was also elected by my community. So, I mean, it's just, as a person, only the amount of like harassment that I face and targeting, it's wild. And I think it was that way probably for every first and only that has gone before me of any identity. And so it sucks. And I think people like you who still believe in what's right and just.
God, thank you for that answer.
Mhm.
MS Seals or M Seals says, can mentally challenged people vote? That's a good question. I don't know that.
They can. Yeah, they have legal rights. I think if you're actually declared. I think there is one limitation on some people in the law. I'll have to look it up, but I do think.
I'm going to go back up. One was on the ARPA. It says she can't seem to contact Mrs. Robin. Our PA money, the ARPA money, was obligated and cannot be used for anything else. The council started a campaign about the funding and now it's imposed in order to sabotage that 1.1 million of U.S. Treasury COVID money. If they try to find or get out of that obligation, they will lose 1 million plus that would be used to save and change the lives of residents. And I think that's what you were saying, right? But we need to use that money for sure. That's critical. We don't want to lose that money.
Yep.
All right. So, Friends of Smith Co. Bremerton violated the Federal Fair Housing Act systemically and currently, including via the city scheme sabotage the shelter. And I'll leave these to you to comment if you want to comment on those. Bremerton violates the Federal Fair Housing Act systemically. Okay, we read that one.
There's the RCW.
Here's the RCW 35.21.689, RCW 35.21.683, RCW 35A.21.430 bars Bremerton from prohibiting shelters and transitioning housing. I guess what I would ask you, Representative Simmons, could you look into these RCWs and just confirm with us if that is true, so that we can have some other power that we can go and say, hey, I'm not just Joe Blow citizen, but my state rep has looked at these RCWs and he's right.
Yeah, I can at least tell you what they say. I don't know what the facts are, so I mean, I can't investigate, but I can give you some more information about those RCWs for sure. It's based on whatever evidence or facts that we have.
Gotcha.
You know what I mean?
All right, Friends of Smith Co. If you want to send that to me or send it directly to Tara, I'll make sure that she gets it. But Bremerton City Council is barring the shelter transitional housing project in Harrison Heights by lying. HS zone does not allow it.
Well, I don't know if that's necessarily true. I will say, like we talked about, I think there is some zoning, from what I understand from the partner, they can do the shelter without like the blessing of the city council.
Right.
But they don't want to be adverse to their partners.
Gotcha.
I think that's what it is. And also, if they wanted to do the tiny homes around it, they might need some actual permitting changes for that, or some zoning changes for that.
Right.
But,
so they're kind of in a rock and a hard spot, right? We could do this, but then everything else that we try to do in this city is going to be met with super resistance, and so it's just not worth destroying the relationship for this. So we really need their buy-in in order to go forward. Okay. Conservative activism says infidelity, I believe, is the number one cause of divorce. Yes, infidelity, finances, politics, religion. It's all coming up there now. That was said twice. We read these from Kelly. Shout out to Kelly. Conservatism says, Mr. Marwan, talk about the bias against men, and Simmons talks about black men. She is just pandering for votes. I'll let you answer that.
Well, I mean, I think that you were saying you're coming through this conversation as a black man, and so we were definitely talking about both. About some issues are more tied to men, some are more tied to black men. So whatever, I'm not pandering for votes. It's who I am, and I do have two black sons.
Gotcha. and again, I'll give you some insider baseball. Me and her had a big disagreement 2 years ago, and we hadn't spoken very often until very recently. So and she ain't pandering. I'll tell you that much. Spineless people don't take on opposing views. Classic. I'm not sure if that was to me. Conservative activism. I would love to have a conversation with you. So hit me up offline. We can talk, because I like talking to the opposition. Deb Perry says great talk. We've got thank you G2 from Kelly again. Guyland. Can Marwan ask Representative Simmons about House Bill 1106 and House Bill 1165, the VA property tax exemption?
Oh, let me see. 1106. I'll see where that's at right now. That I signed on to that one, and
you signed on to that one. Okay.
It's 1106 became law last year, so that's good. That one is relating to, let's see, recognizing the tremendous sacrifice made by our military veterans by phasing down the disability rating requirements to ensure more disabled veterans are eligible for property tax relief. So that one became law last session. And what's the one? 1165.
1165.
Let me see. This is Shaver's bill expanding access to property tax exemption program for seniors, people retired due to disability, veterans with disabilities. And this one is in the House. Hasn't had a hearing. Looks like it's dead for this session. But yeah.
All right. So when he comes back in the room, he can ask a follow-up question there, because that's really big to him. He is a retired veteran. And I believe that bill is about veterans that are retired and I believe disabled, not having to pay property tax. And so you're saying that that's passed?
Yeah, 1106 passed last session.
Okay.
And I don't know exactly what it does, but I will look.
Do you want to ask your question? We're talking about the House bills right now. Right.
Okay.
That's your question? Okay. So she's saying it just passed last session.
Yeah, 1106 passed last session. Let me see if I can get
So what, I mean,
about the final bill report. Says that
I looked at it, but
beginning January 1st, 2027, the disabled veteran combined service-connected evaluation rating for the SPTE is increased from 80% or higher to 40% or higher for taxes levied for collection in calendar year 2027 and thereafter. So it sounds like, what is SPTE? Let me see what that special tax preference probably. So basically, I believe what this is saying is if you're 80%, it used to be if you're 80% service connected, now it can be 40% service connected for you to qualify for the property tax relief, but it is starting January 1st, 2027.
it's still going to be based on income, correct?
Mm-hmm. How about if I send this to you so that way we can follow up? It's kind of a
Yes, ma'am.
thing that we're going to look it up. Property tax, regular levies. Let me see, this is background information.
While she's looking, are you aware that it went from 80 to 40?
I did.
Okay.
I was.
Okay.
I was trying to figure out if they could look
What
at
that income threshold
Well,
is.
why is it income based when other states are just like rate based, or it is outright give you an exemption if you're like 100%.
Gotcha.
Mm-hmm. Oh, yeah.
So for like me and my spouse, we're both disabled veterans. It would still use the same income, so we still wouldn't qualify.
Oh, gotcha. Okay. Did you catch that?
Yeah, so it says the income threshold deferral program is the greater of 75% of the county median household income or 45,000. Yeah, so you don't qualify if you are income based.
So I guess now is, I would assume you're now advocating, hey, great, it went from 80 to 40, but now we need to advocate for income based, because we know that who is living off of $45,000 a year. I'm a retired disabled vet, and this property tax is killing me as well as everything else. I think that is the next threshold to overcome. Is that what I'm hearing from you?
Correct.
Okay.
So how about, and there's another part of the commercial tax exemption with $7,000 maximum. We should talk more about this when we have more time offline, but yeah, so make sure you contact me directly, and we can, even if we can't do anything right now, we can do something over interim. And Akuye, I love you so much. I'm so glad.
You can ask you a question. Really
Okay,
soon. We're almost done. We're almost at the bottom here.
Okay.
And that's why I saved it for last.
I love her.
Shout out to Ride or Die. Put aside the things that would separate us. Yes, ma'am. And again, it's from Kelly and then Joe. It was worth sticking around even for a late start.
We love you, Joe. You're amazing. You do so much for our community.
All right, go ahead and give Akuye the mic. She will be the last person.
Thank you for doing this, because I think the more that we can have these conversations and get clarity on how we can move forward to help support our communities. I know there's challenges, but as we come together, we can communicate, okay, what are some of these barriers and how can we work in a unified way to be able to address some of these challenges. I just want to say thanks again for coming in. But one of the things I wanted to ask you specifically is we've been working diligently since 2014 to protect and preserve the African American contributions and the building of pioneers that came here through here in the late 17, early 1800s, all the way through the building of these shipyards, building of our county, building of our the Bremerton, you know, Keyport, all of these bases that are here, and the huge migration of African Americans that came here and worked diligently to help build this region. How can we protect that rich heritage? Of course, we know Quincy Jones. You know, they want to highlight Quincy Jones Square. But how do we protect these endangered artifacts? We've had African artifacts, documents, you know, photos back to the 1800s that need to be preserved, that is literally being erased from human footprint and contributions of African Americans to specifically to Kitsap County. How can we make sure that that isn't being lost?
Oh goodness, we better make sure that you stay working and keeping that stuff going, because I know you've been doing it to the Living Life Heritage,
Yes.
right?
Yes.
And so we need to make sure there's a plan, a succession plan. To
Yes.
And like, where do you want to store those things, house them?
Yes.
I mean, you know, we have to find a partner for you. I think
Yes.
you are with Evergreen College.
We are
maybe,
with
or-
Evergreen. We started with Olympic, you know, Olympic
That's where it
College
should be.
too, and that's where we would hope. But all the work that we're doing now down at Evergreen could have been done right here in the
I know.
community from where all this rich
I
history
know.
evolved from. So how can we begin to say, okay, it's valued here,
Yeah.
it's needed here.
Yeah, I think
We
it is.
want to make sure that we're healing
Yeah.
that history, because we've not always had healthy history.
Mhm.
But I think it is a catalyst when you're valuing those pioneers and those leaders that have helped shape
Yeah.
our county, not just our county, but not just the region, but the state and the nation. Back in the 30s and the 40s, you had Miss Lillian Walker and Mrs. Greer and the Colvins and all of
Yeah.
them that migrated here and really shaped this shipyard, working in that shipyard for civil rights and human rights and equitable practices, and have worked diligently throughout the state to make sure they were working with the Democratic Party, working with the NAACP. We have such rich history because Lillian Walker and Mrs. Greer was mandated by the NAACP to make sure they were recording and preserving the contributions and pioneers that came through this region during that time period. We wouldn't even have that rich history. And then it was passed on to Diane Robinson when they decided they were going to build the Kitsap County African American Historical Society. And we need to preserve that rich history that has really shaped the nation, because they weren't only, and I can say this, they weren't only documenting those pioneers that came through Kitsap County, but they documented those that came through Washington State, California, Oregon, and Alaska during that time period, because they were really working in a unified collective way, and they were uplifting their community because they had to, because back in those days they didn't have the rights that our young people have now. The civil rights hadn't happened yet. They were still working under Jim Crow laws. So we have to be able to say this is something that's valued and we need to protect and preserve it.
Is the Kitsap Historical is African American Museum, or what? They still have this stuff, or I thought Living Life Heritage.
Yeah, no,
does,
the
or-
Living Arts Cultural Heritage have it.
Okay.
We are Dr. Maxine Mims, before she went on to be with the ancestors, said we will help you protect and preserve it. We
Okay.
can't allow this to go to the landfill, and we
No.
can't allow it to be scattered
Yeah.
all throughout.
So you have it right now.
Yes, we
Okay.
have it.
So, and you're working with Evergreen, but it sounds like, so Olympic College, you know, they're about to hire a new president.
Mhm.
You know, Harriet Bryant is on
Yes,
the
I do.
board of trustees.
Yes,
So it sounds like, and Pastor Coleman.
yes,
So I hope maybe when we hire the new president coming in the next couple of months,
yes, ma'am.
maybe we can come up with like a project idea.
Mhm.
And if it's just like a small capital budget request,
Yes.
I would be happy to sponsor that next session
Yeah,
to
please.
help create a space or something
Yes.
to make sure
Just a
it,
place.
yeah, like we need to make sure that this is
Yes.
secure. And
Yes.
if we can do a local community project, or we can look at commerce in the building and arts cultural fund,
Yep.
to try and get a little
Yes.
resources to make sure that it sounds like Olympic College would be better just because it's our community,
It's
right?
our community,
So,
but it's also
mhm.
our county and our cities and
Yeah.
our state.
Yeah.
And so, how do we
Yeah.
work in that
Yeah.
capacity
Yeah.
to be able to come under the umbrella of arts, culture, and heritage?
Yes.
Because we were caucusing down all this
Yeah.
week down in
Yeah.
Olympia. We
Mhm.
missed you
I
yesterday. We know you
know.
weren't
Did you see
feeling
Zach?
well.
Did you get to see that?
We were able to meet with Drew Hansen. We were able to meet with some of our representatives and be able to have this conversation and know that we're moving forward. But we need our community
Mhm.
to whether it's the city, whether it's downtown Bremer Association, whether it is our, our commissioners, that we're saying this history is endangered and we need to preserve it and protect it.
You have to find the right place. And
Yes.
you let us know.
Yes, ma'am.
If it's Olympic College,
Mhm.
I think Harriet and Frankie could help.
Mhm.
But if it's somewhere else, it's your project. It's your baby.
Well,
You've
I
been
think it
shepherding it for a long
belongs.
time.
I think it belongs to our community
It does.
as a
It does.
whole, and it doesn't matter if you're black, white, or other. It's human history,
Yes,
and
we
it's a
need it.
contribution, and it has shaped what our county looks like now, and we want to make sure that that is valued and being
Yeah.
protected.
And
Yeah.
you have shaped my life,
Yep.
and Bishop, and so many others.
That's it. And those are the leaders, and those are the
We need to make
legacies. We're
sure.
talking about living legacies that need to be protected here in our community.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, thank you for even
You're welcome.
listening.
Absolutely. Yes.
All
Let us
right.
know. All right. Okay. Are we signing off? I gotta run. Okay, you're gonna sign us off. Love the Coulier. I'm so glad you came.
All right, y'all. So we want to thank Tarra Simmons for coming in. She didn't dodge any questions. Took it on the chin. As I tell everyone, this isn't a gotcha show. So I'm not here to try to, set someone up or do anything like that. You get one time to do that, folks, and they won't come back. So
Yeah.
it's not in your best interest, and you're trying to move it forward. It's just what
Yeah.
Tara was saying about BHA. I don't want to be a bad relationship with the city, because then we're not going to be able to go forward. And we need to build more affordable housing. We need to be able to provide more vouchers in Kitsap County. And so we have to work in partnership. And the whole thing is about communication and dialogue and trying to get things done. And so I appreciate you for that. You had talked about coming after the session was over.
Absolutely.
I love to have you.
Yeah.
I know you're super busy. If you can't come in, we can do it, remotely. Sorry, I went a little long.
It's okay.
know,
It was great to see you
But
again.
yeah, it's great to see
Been a
you
while.
too. And I just really appreciate
I
you.
appreciate you.
And with that, I'm going to say, as I always do, I am Marwan Cameron. This is The Conduit. Take care of yourself.